Okay, so today I'm going to be responding to a claim that was about the adult prison system not being, or it negatively affects the rehabilitation for juveniles. And she names 3 claims which are more likely to reoffend, lost in the legal system due to the lack of rehabilitation programs, and difficulty readjusting after being out. So what I found in my research basically was that a lot of these juveniles between the ages of 13 and 17 are technically being tried as adults because of the fact that they're doing crimes such as like arson or murder, and you would never think that of a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, you know. But a lot of this is because of their socio-economical background, who they hang out with, who they're brought up by, and you know, school, like the school system or the area that they grew up in. And other controlling factors are educational level, gang involvement, the offense type is what the judge is predicting or putting their offense on, and the sentence length as well as the time served. So what I found is a lot of qualitative evidence that suggests that when they're in there, there's programs to actually help them benefit so that they don't do this kind of stuff. And yes, because they are tried as an adult for the offense, there's a theoretical model called the risk, need, and responsive principles. And the model is based off of, or it was formulated in 1990, and it's supposed to help these individual offenders improve and learn how to balance life and balance, you know, just doing better than what they went in there for. And so the R&R model is it's supposed to help facilitate change and focus the punitive juvenile justice practices back to the individualized assessment and treatment of juveniles and like reintegration. So basically, the risk principle is it's basically a match level of service to the offenders so that they don't reoffend. And the need model is assess criminologic need and target so that when they're in the treatment, they understand what it is that they need to meet, because they have tests every week or every month or something like that. And the responsive model is to maximize the offender's ability to learn from a rehabilitative intervention by providing cognitive behavioral treatment and tailoring the intervention to the learning style, motivation, abilities, and strengths of the offender. So it's supposed to twist them completely. And then going to the balance of them in being lost in the legal system, being in a juvenile criminal justice system, there's no balance of there's no record of them. The record is through the adult prison system. They don't have any record of that. So there's no I found it hard to find a claim to justify that. And then the difficult readjusting is that with this whole R&R model, that they're not supposed to, when they come out, they're supposed to be a changed person, being that they have to put all the stuff that they were charged for on a job application when they get out as an 18-year-old, or whenever they get out, at that point that they're technically an adult, they they're supposed to find, the programs are supposed to find them jobs that cater to what, the principal factors that they've used in the jail system.
All right, Devin, you set up the advocate's claim and secondary claims pretty clearly, and then that's really the last time it was clear what your structure was. It sounded to me like your argument comes down to we have juvenile offenders, and we have a new program that's supposed to be used to evaluate them, and then you describe what this whole program is supposed to do. A lot of the things that are supposed to be details in this are minutiae that take us off on a track, but there's not any demonstration that it succeeds in these things. These are its goals, but I guess the idea is that we're supposed to contrast the argument that you're presenting to what the advocate is saying is happening. I don't know that that necessarily applies, but I do know that it doesn't deny the arguments that the advocate is presenting. So in other words, maybe the policy that you're describing here would address some of the issues that's going on there, but it's not very clear. But it doesn't address some of the risk factors that the advocate is saying that people are going to run into as problems because they are in the adult facilities. I think that is problematic. There's not any discussion of the advocate's evidence or their reasoning on this. It's all about your description of this new policy that supposedly has been started to be put in place since 1990. By the way, if it's been put in place since 1990, that would suggest that it's been around, I'm doing math in my head in front of people again, 27 years. So where's the indication that it has had these effects? Especially if the advocate's evidence is relatively recent, then the question becomes, well, this seems to be happening despite the policy that you're talking about. You know, if all of their evidence is referring to events and problems that have occurred in the last 5 or 10 years, well, that's happening with the program that you're describing. So your program apparently hasn't prevented those things from occurring. That, I think, means that the advocate has a legitimate criticism of the existing system. You've tried to describe a different system, but again, their arguments it's not necessarily competitive. And I think you get sidetracked on a number of issues. You go off on, like I said, on descriptions of what this thing is supposed to do, and it all sounds like it's a good theory about how to address the criminal justice system at that particular age group. But there's no evidence that says that it works, and that seems to me to be the biggest problem with your argument. If it all works and it fixes all these problems, then we don't need to worry about the things that the affirmative or the advocate describes, but we don't have any data that says that. Okay.